podcast here with Garry Tonon on Friday, December 11th. It's around 10 o'clock. We just finished watching Frankie Edgar knock out Chad Mendes. And, you know, what's your thoughts on your training partner winning so quickly? It's such a scene fashion.
Frankie is most sharp in his boxing, and he's got Mark Henry as his boxing coach. And, man, the things that they do, Mark just doesn't really accept anything less than perfection. And, every time Frankie goes out, maybe he doesn't necessarily finish every single fight, but everything's sharp, everything's concise. There's a plan to everything. You see him getting in on punches, getting in on takedowns. He scores his points when he needs to. He's a very winning fighter, man. There's a lot of fights where he lost that by decision and things I just definitely didn't agree with. But he's probably one of the most underrated fighters. He was fighting at 155, and then Dana's like, you should fight 145. Should fight 145, and then sure enough, he's the champion. And then the moment he gets knocked down a peg, he's got to fight 145. Now then he has some tough fights. Again, some bad decisions in my opinion. And then, now I hear the announcer saying, oh, yeah, he could easily fight at 135. Of course he could, but the dude was doing fine at 155, but, he's just excellent. The guys he was fighting at 155 were like 190 pounds. Frankie walks around at 155 pounds. It's pretty incredible the things he's able to do.
So between seeing your training partner, Frankie Edgar, who has some of your same coaches and training partners, and seeing another person you're pretty familiar with, Ryan Hall, just win the Ultimate Fighter for this season. How much of a confidence boost is that for you as far as your MMA career that you're embarking on? Yeah,
I'm seeing a lot of more submission victories recently in the UFC, specifically by leg lock. Not just the UFC, across Bellator and some other promotions. It's definitely a big confidence booster in the sense that I don't necessarily consider everybody that's getting all these leg lock victories to be experts or anything like that. Certainly Ryan Hall is a little higher up on the list than some of these other guys that are landing leg locks and things, and they're still able to do it under high stress situations, in fights and things. So it gives me a lot of confidence in my abilities, eventually one day when I get into the ring. I still have a lot of things to sharpen up. The stand-up is very, very, very weak, and we'll get somewhere with that, and then then I'll think about stepping in the ring. Still approximately a year, maybe 6 months to 8 months before a first fight, I think, would ever happen for me.
And who is going to be your primary MMA coaches once you once you start training more full-time for MMA?
I think I'm going to still be professionally grappling while I do MMA. I don't have any plans of stopping doing events or super fights or anything like that. So I'll probably be working closely with John on both, continue working with him with grappling, and have him be like my main, MMA coach. I'm going to have other coaches for boxing and wrestling and things. I have Matt Pletcher's been my wrestling coach. I'm working with just a few guys right now on some of the stand-up stuff. I don't have like a solid one coach. I work with Shaheen in New York. And, I'm probably going to bounce around. We have a lot of we're very, very lucky on the East Coast to have, the Renzo Gracie team, Ricardo Almeida, CBJ, where Tom DeBlas, Tom DeBlas runs that school where I have all these different training partners that have MMA experience that I can pull from. So I'll at least get very good sparring from all those guys. But I don't think I'll get a lot of input from a lot of different people, to be honest. But I think, since I'm in the city so often for jiu-jitsu, probably John will be the MMA coach, I would say, quote unquote.
And what's it like having someone like John Danaher? Because training with Sean Williams, he told us numerous stories about John and just, how both, not only just from a technical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, how he prepares fighters and philosophically. What is the big takeaway that people may not know? Because everybody sees him as a great jiu-jitsu mind, but what's the thing that people might not know about him from just an overall martial arts standpoint?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it's not like a lot of people, they see some of the things that he does, and they'll meet him and talk to him and things, and they set him aside and they say like, things like he's a genius and that, and he is certainly very smart, above average intelligence human being, very, very smart. But that's not really what makes him who he is. He develops a systematic approach to learning about jiu-jitsu and martial arts in general, and he uses it. He tries to make a systematic, scientific approach to everything that he does, and he it's regimented. He studies, he practices, he helps us. We do research. Just recently for EBI, we were doing research on back triangle escapes and things that worked well in fight situations in live competition, and something that he hadn't worked on before. He wanted to explore more often. So it's very research based. It's like turning jiu-jitsu into a science. So it's not that I really think that it's just because he's super smart or anything like that. I just think he takes things very seriously, studies very hard, trains very hard, and is really looking to make the most of jiu-jitsu as a martial art, and in MMA as well. I believe he's trying to bring jiu-jitsu to the forefront of MMA. We've seen him successfully coach former champions in the UFC, former and current, GSP and Chris Weidman. And he's worked with a bunch of other guys that have come down to the gym: Rory McDonald, Jake Shields, Eric Silva was recently in. All these guys that that come to him for help and get it. And everything that I've heard him, every person I've heard him give advice to, it's always been very systematic, like I said. And it really makes you feel like you have a professionally run camp for like a jiu-jitsu event or something like that. I have set drills that I'm working on and movements that I'm working on and things that I know that I can go back to and I can warm up with and all that stuff. So altogether, it's just it helps fit all the pieces together. It makes you feel a little bit more comfortable when you can do something consistently and trust it.
And also, I remember Joe Rogan said on his podcast that after Chris Weidman first knocked out Anderson Silva, he went to the octagon and said, "Congratulate John Danaher." And John Danaher just shook his head and said he took too many leg kicks. Was his first reaction. Do you see does that pretty much sum up John, where he's always analyzing situations and opportunities?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? The way he views being a coach, and he's talked to us about this before, is that his job is to help us, get better and to improve upon whatever we're doing, as athletes. So that's how he views all that stuff. You know what I mean? Whereas somebody might just get, I'm sure he's very excited every time his athletes win and things like that. But every time we come back, he's always asking us, what kind of problems we face, this, that, and the other thing. Watching tape if there was tape on us. It's a very insightful takeaway that John happened to have with checking leg kicks and things like that. And then it just so happens that Anderson ends up breaking his leg. It's an interesting coincidence, but that's exactly what he was doing. He's watching, and I'll be willing to bet you that that was probably a big reason that did happen in the second fight, because he probably paid a little bit more attention to doing that for sure.
Without going into too many details, I still have seen some recent photos. You've been training with Chris Weidman, you and the rest of the Henzo Gracie team. Do you see anything in particular where work with Chris and John and the rest of the team as far as game planning goes? And is there, without going into too many details, anything we should expect to see from Weidman tomorrow from a strategic standpoint?
I haven't been seeing as much of Weidman as I used to. I used to train with Weidman a lot more when he had a shoulder injury, and he couldn't go with a lot of bigger guys for fear of possibly re-injuring the shoulder. So he was training with me fairly consistently for a little while in the city, at least one day a week. And I was training a lot with him back then, but that was a couple years ago. But now I haven't seen as much of him. We trained with him a little while back. I'm not as up to date with exactly what the guy's doing in terms of his jiu-jitsu or his game plan for MMA and things. I do know that John was going to stay with me for the rest of the EBI camp, but then he was out training with Weidman and thought that it would be good for him to follow him to Vegas and help him out during his last week of training to sharpen up a few things. So I'm sure he's got some ideas, because he definitely felt like it was a good thing for him to go and help Chris with that last week of training. So I'm sure that they're just sharpening some details, but I can't say for sure. You know, I'll tell you one thing. Whenever we did train with each other, he's got a mean Darce. That was the worst submission you know I've ever been caught in. He would just repeatedly Darce me. That's the only thing that gives me, like, that's whenever you say Chris Weidman, that's what I get flashbacks of. He's just getting Darced over and over again.
And just going back, you're going to continue to do super fights, train jiu-jitsu. When we spoke to Mackenzie Dern, she said, I'm not giving up jiu-jitsu. I'm still going to compete.
Yeah.
I'm still going to do the IBJJF events, and I'm going to do MMA as well. Why hold on to the grappling? Is it just because of the revenue, income, or just also keeping your name out there, or just the passion for it?
It's a little bit of all of those things, you know. It certainly helps, you know, as I'm building my MMA career. I'm sure I won't be making very much money at the beginning of it, so it'll certainly help support me in terms of a revenue stream, but mostly because it's just my first love. I love jiu-jitsu, and I can't really see a situation where I wouldn't want to do it anymore. You know, obviously you see situations where guys get to you know, the championship level, and UFC doesn't really want them fighting, doing too many grappling events and things. But you know, I would always want to continue for as long as I could, because you know, it's my base, and it's what I really love to do. I love grappling, and you know, I like striking and stuff too, and I'm gonna mix all that all together in MMA. But yeah, it's hard for me to envision a life where I'm not, you know, competing or training jiu-jitsu or anything like that. So I definitely don't want to lose sight of you know, my passion there. Mm-hmm. That's mostly why I would continue competing and stuff.
And right now, you're looking at jiu-jitsu burst, just transitioning now to EBI 5. This purse is $20,000.
Yeah.
What do you think of that? Because I remember going to watch you at the first EBI. I'm not even sure. Do you get a purse for that?
Yeah, I think the first EBI was like, I want to say it was like 1,000 or 2,000 maybe.
And a huge trophy.
Yeah, oh yeah, the huge trophy. But yeah, I think it was only $1,000 or $2,000. I can't remember exactly. And I remember Eddie saying before that EBI, like talking up the event, like, oh yeah, one day we want to make it like so that each match you get 25 grand or something like that, you know, it'll be $100,000. And I remember when I first listened to him, I was just kind of like, oh yeah, he's just promoting the event. You know, I know they don't have that kind of money yet, and they didn't back then, but it really has been building up, you know, to be able to get up to 20 grand as a prize if somebody submits everybody. And you know, their next show, EBI 6, they plan to give away 50,000 for the victor. You know, I mean, it's growing. It's clearly becoming relevant. It's clearly becoming something that people at least want to sponsor. You know, I don't know how much money he's actually making up off the event, but it's something that interests people enough that they're willing to commit money to it so that he has prize money for the event. So I'm looking forward to that getting bigger and bigger, and just this whole idea of submission-only events, you know, just spreading, going from place to place. I know did they just do something maybe in Russia or something like that?
Yeah, basically, Homolo just fought Andre Galvao over there, November 21st. Your boy Edwin Nash, was actually the color commentator for it. And I think some rich, from what Budo Jake told me, some rich Russian oil baron or some Russian gangsters just said, hey, I want to put on an event, and I'm going to bankroll it.
Well, that's awesome. You know what I mean?
And I think both guys got paid really well, too.
But that's, you know, that's what I'm saying. It's just going all over the world, different places, holding events and things, and that's what it's going to take. It's just getting more and more exposure, and eventually you get enough of a fan base, and you know, I can see it being, you know, a big thing. It's already a huge thing. I'm so glad that that's the case. You know, 5 years ago, you know, I would never have been able to make, you know, a living competing. Well, I don't make a living, you know, 100% competing. I have my school and stuff too, but I would never be able to supplement my living the way that I do with competing and things, because there just wasn't those kind of events out there really. It's just pretty much IBJJF and ADCC. So I'm very excited that that's happening, and it's becoming more of a spectator sport where people are actually excited to watch, you know.
Well, $20K to me, that's a lot of money.
Yes.
And to you, it's a lot of money. To Eddie Cummings, it was a lot of money. And it's just kind of funny to me how some people, a lot of great black belts are willing to go compete at Nogi Worlds in the Gi and other major IBJJF events that don't pay, but you don't see Cobrina or Hoffa Mendes or some of the other bigger names saying, "Hey, I want to compete in EBI."
Yeah, it is strange. I agree with you. I supposedly, according to Eddie says that he always reaches out to those guys and asks them if they want to do the events, and they usually respond that they're not interested. I don't know if it's too much of a risk for them if they don't get the submission. Getting into a shootout situation where somebody's on their back and they end up submitting them, and they don't end up submitting the other person. And they feel like maybe it's a detriment to their name or something. If they don't want to take that kind of risk, maybe, I don't know. Maybe they make enough money, teaching seminars and doing all that other stuff. It's not that big of an appeal to them yet. You're seeing, bigger names pop in there here and there, but yeah, I agree with you. It surprises me, but I think it's a stylistic thing. I think there's always going to be certain people that aren't really going to be doing too many sub-only events, because especially the way that this event is geared, if you don't submit, the people, you're not making any money. So, and if you, kind of view yourself as somebody who scores a lot of points, wins by advantages and things like that, it doesn't really help you here. You get to win the whole tournament and not make any money, So unless you have a high submission rate, this isn't really the tournament for you, So I think that might be some of other people's decisions. I'm not going to say, one person or the other, why they're going to do the event or why they're not. But supposedly Eddie reaches out to all those guys and asks them if they want to do it. I'm sure if Cobrina asked to do, EBI, I could never see Eddie saying no. You know what I mean? So, because I would imagine that would have got out too if they ever did. So I'm pretty sure he says, he's asked those guys and they're just not interested. So.
Because you own a school.
Mm-hmm.
You also compete full-time. You do the IBJJFs, and you're living the experience that many of these guys are.
Mm-hmm.
20K is a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it just seems like, from a risk-reward standpoint, whether it's reputation, it's still funny to me that they would say, you know what, because all these guys are capable of submitting, especially if they're
I think so too. Yeah, I agree with you, man. That's why I do it. I just love competing too, but and I think it's a better tournament style for my style of jiu-jitsu. Yeah, man, it's hard for me to turn. It's very tough for me to turn down 20 grand. I ended up doing this one on short notice, but I would have ended up doing the next one. Maybe Eddie will do the next one. We'll see. Alternating, try not to, fight against each other too much. Even though we did that one time. Yeah, man. I don't know. I can't explain it, because for me, I can't pass up an opportunity to win 20 grand either.
Yeah, and originally Eddie Cummings, who's your close friend and training partner, was supposed to do this event up until around 2 weeks ago when he injured his knee, and then you stepped in. So you guys do have a gentleman's agreement where I'll do this one, you'll do the next one.
Yeah. It's very cordial. If they would let us go on opposite sides of the bracket, we might consider doing it, both doing it. But I understand their reasons for that. It's basically we just try to compete in different things, and EBI is obviously a good rule set for both of us, so we'll alternate back and forth depending on the weight class or whatever the case may be. And he was planning on doing this one, and then I probably would have done the absolute, so maybe we'll switch it out now. Hopefully his knee recovers well, and be in the absolute one. I think he'll do well there.
And you took this fill-in job from Eddie basically on 2 weeks' notice. It was right off after Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
You did have a super fight last weekend. How much weight were you at, and how much of a concern was the weight cut for you? Because it was Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Realistically, I was at when I first got everything situated, I was like 173, I think. But it was less than 2 weeks out, I'm pretty sure, when they made the final call as to Eddie not doing it. And I don't know if John told him that it was I don't know, but it got out that I was like 165 or something. I was like, I don't think I'm 165 yet. But I got my weight down. I'm fine. I was just heavy for that period of time because I wasn't really I wasn't planning on doing any events or anything that I had a weight class for. But I mean, 155 is a very easy weight for me to make. In less than 2 weeks from that particular weight, I had to do everything very regimented and pay attention to my diet and everything. But ultimately, it's nothing too crazy. For MMA, like I will always tell people, at the very least, I'll be fighting 145. So 155 is not a like a crazy thing to make. Especially you weigh in morning of, you have a few hours or so to rehydrate, and yeah, I'll be fine. I'm feeling plenty good with the weight cut.
And when Eddie got injured, how long did it take for you to decide that you were going to step in for him?
Oh, I mean, we made that decision. We kind of, we were teetering on that decision. Maybe 2 weeks out, he wasn't 100% sure if his knee was going to be good or not good. So, I mean, he basically asked me like 2 weeks out, like, hey, man, are you going to be ready to do this if, I end up not doing it? I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. I'd be happy to. I obviously wanted to. Just like you said before, I would never want, not at least one of us to pass up the opportunity to be in the events.
Are you gonna get your name on the marquee again this time?
I doubt it, because I stepped in pretty late. Plus, me and Denny are both kind of returning. Denny's kind of the returning winner of this one, so we'll see. That was cool the one time that they did that. So.
Yeah, and again, just going back, another question about just the short notice. Eddie's a pretty analytical guy. Do you have scouting reports on all the participants?
He does his research, man. He pays attention, and he helps me with all that stuff, and I'm glad that he does. He takes John's perspective on a lot of different things, and I try to do that as well. But he's definitely a studier. He watches a lot of tape. So he's pretty good with that sort of thing. It's always good to get a little bit of advice. I tend to be a little bit more spontaneous. He's much more preparation and planning, and I think we work really well together in that aspect. I come up with some creative things for him to look at, and then he helps me with my preparation and planning, and we go back and forth with each other. He tends to be a little of a realist or underconfident in certain situations, and I bring him back to being confident in himself, or believing in the things that he does, and then vice versa. Sometimes I'll get a little overconfident, and he tells me, hey man, you gotta watch out for this, and I'll pay a little bit more attention to him. I think we both respect each other enough to take each other's advice. So.
And he'll be quartering you on Sunday along with Octavia Bourdain.
Yes.
And how important was having Eddie just for the whole cram session over the past 2 weeks?
Oh, it's been great, man. I had John for the first week, or a little over a week, and then Eddie stepped in and supplemented the things that John was going over with me, and then now I'm going to have him out here. We're going to train tomorrow afternoon at 5 Star with Sean, and then I think that'll be like the last session before we get out there. So we'll just have some drills before the day of the tournament, and Eddie knows tons about my game. I know a bunch about his, so I think we're great quarters for each other, to be honest.
And has he given you the scouting reports on some of the top guys, such as Yaha, Prokopos, Orchard?
He's given me little details about each guy. Raniaya says he's got a bad north-south choke, and you could get stalled out from that position. Denny, I've seen Eddie compete against before. I've seen him compete, so I know enough about him. I watched Gordon compete against my first opponent, Steven Martinez, and I already know probably my second opponent will probably be Javier Vasquez, and I competed against him before. So, I got a decent look at, a lot of the guys in this. I've seen a lot of the guys in this before. I've watched their matches, but yeah, he's definitely given me some details about each of those guys.
And this is the deepest field of EBI history. Everybody's a black belt. Everybody's pretty accomplished in jiu-jitsu and MMA. Who do you see as your biggest obstacles for this event?
Biggest obstacles?
Because you got Barrett Yoshida, Orchard, Propokos, Yaha, Martinez, like you said.
It's really tough. It's a big toss-up on the other side of the bracket as to who's going to end up being there. But even on my side of the bracket, I don't know. Ronnie Aya hasn't done much recently, so except at least in the jiu-jitsu world. So it'll be interesting to see where he matches up. But that could be a potential threat. Barrett Yoshida is definitely a potential threat. He's very sharp. Although Eddie defeated him pretty quickly last time, it's still a real threat. You don't want to get put in any bad spots with him. And Nathan's gotten a lot better. I think he's a real threat too. Danny, I've never competed against, but I've watched him a lot, and he's a tough competitor too. I really don't have I can't pick and choose one person necessarily who I think I'm necessarily going to be paired against at the end. I can't say for sure, but or who is going to be my hardest fight. But looking forward to competing against all these guys.
And Yaha does have an ADCC title under his belt. Orchard is a very big one, 155 pounder.
Yes,
probably walks around closer to 180 on that.
Oh yeah, he's huge. He's huge. That's why a lot of people being worried about me making a weight cut to 155. It's like, dude, Steven Martinez is huge. My first opponent, he's got to be over 180 pounds most of the time. Nathan Orchard, same thing. He's huge. He's over 180. So, so this weight cut for me is like, I'm much closer to my natural body weight for this weight cut than those guys are. So, I'm not worried about it at all. And
just going back, you're undefeated when you travel to the West Coast with Eddie and Octavia and also usually Jeff Chu. How important is it just to have that camaraderie and group with you when you're coming out here, cutting a little bit of weight, and also just being on such a big stage? How important is it to have those familiar faces with you?
It's great, man. If anybody ever wasn't able to show up, I'm sure we'd make do. But at the same time, it's great to have consistency. As an athlete, a lot of people ask me about, preparation, whether it be, diet or either warm up and this, that, and the other thing. I don't think there's anything that's necessarily magic, but I think that the most important thing, and, I studied exercise science and a little bit of sports psychology as well. And this is pretty consistent with some of the stuff that we learned, is just developing routine, that you're comfortable with and that makes you feel comfortable. All right, one of the biggest threats to a high performance athlete is just anxiety and nerves in general. Because it's a pretty level playing field. You've got a lot of people that have high skills. So something small like that, maybe making you hesitate or making you doubt yourself or whatever the case may be, could be a deciding factor in a big event. So just having those same people around me that I feel comfortable with and that are always helping me out is a huge factor in my success. And it's not just them coming out here to corner me. It's everybody that's in my training camp consistently all the time, each and every day leading up to the event, that makes me feel comfortable and confident in what I'm doing and that what I'm doing works because I have tough training partners. But I think the consistency, whenever there's consistency in my training camps, when there's consistency in the people that are around me and things like that, it always makes me feel a little bit more comfortable.
And they'll definitely be there. And again, two-time EBI champion, definitely have an edge over the competition in that sense. And it's going to be pretty exciting on Sunday. And if you guys do want to watch, it's available on Budo Videos for purchase. I believe it's $19.99, and also on Ticketmaster.com if you want to come down to the Orpheum Theater to catch it. But just wanted to wrap up real quick with a few quick questions concerning sponsorships.
Yeah.
Because you reposted something on your social media feed that Tim Spriggs wrote on his blog about sponsorships.
Yeah.
And also your protege, Gordon Ryan, who has been doing very well on a grappling circuit, winning a bunch of tournaments, choking out black belts who are much larger than him, not being able to get sponsorship dollars other than a few free rash guards and keys. What is the state of sponsorship for the average jiu-jitsu competitor at your level? Is it lucrative? What needs to be done to fix it?
Man, it depends on a bunch of different things. Sometimes it's sometimes it's who like in the sense that I know some of these bigger teams have some connections to sponsorship opportunities with certain apparel companies and things. And other times, I can never hold it against somebody for not wanting to sponsor somebody or not wanting to, consistently sponsor them, whatever. Every company has a different financial situation or whatever the case may be. And far be it for me to say, like, you should spend money on such and such athlete or a athlete in general. You know, who knows? Maybe that's not the smartest financial move for them anyway, you know, in terms of promotional value. I think for some of the smaller companies, it might not make sense to sponsor one of the best athletes. They just don't have the money. And it's, you know, in the long run, it's not going to help them as much. But I certainly think it's kind of hard to believe that, you know, somebody like Gordon, who won pretty much every professional event he's ever competed in, you know, just won Nogi Worlds of brown belt level. I'm trying to think. There's a bunch of sub-only events that he won cash amounts of money for, and things that were all live streamed. You know, somebody that is clearly getting their name out there, is clearly doing well, is going to do well in the future, has a future in the sport. It's not like it's just, oh, he just won one thing here and there. He's clearly climbing. Got second. He was runner-up in ADCC trials, just lost by a point to a guy from Montos, and you know, clearly an up-and-comer who's just doing good things and is going to do even greater things. It seems odd to me that there's not somebody out there that wouldn't see something like that and do more for him than pay for an entry fee here and there, or a couple rash guards here and there. You know, it should be something a little bit more consistent. I mean, I didn't have any type of monthly stipend or anything like that for a long time when I was competing either, and I don't necessarily expect that. But you know, even a little help with his travel and things like that, it's hard to believe that, you know, there's not some people out there that, you know, would see somebody like that and think to sponsor him. And I've just seen him struggle with that a little bit here and there, you know, asking people, you know, for money and to help in terms of sponsorships and stuff. And it's just not being as easy as I would think it would be because of how successful he is. It's just surprising to me. You know, it seems like you win sometimes, and like it just doesn't make a difference, you know, to sponsors necessarily. But you know, I was lucky. You know, I happened to get in with OTM at a really early time, and you know, who knows, maybe I'll be able to get them to help Gordon out in the future. You know, I'll have that conversation with Scotty pretty soon. You know, I wanted to see if Gordon could do his own thing, but you know, I got in with them pretty early at like purple belt. Scotty saw me at a professional event and really took care of me. You know, he saw me as somebody who was going to do really well, and I continued to do really well for him. And as I did better and better, he helped me more and more. And you know, I can't thank him enough for that, and all my other sponsors as well. You know, they haven't all been there since the beginning, but you know, as I progress, I'm getting more and more of a following in terms of sponsors and everything. And I'm in a much more comfortable state with sponsors. So and I'm just looking forward for him to get to that point, you know, to build up to that point. It just doesn't seem like he's going anywhere, you know.
Have you talked to any of your sponsors about what Gordon's missing? Because the talent's obviously there, and the results are there. Is it the social media? Is it the marketing? Is it anything that he's not doing that you think that he could be doing? Because he has a little brother.
Yeah.
Who's also looking good. Why not he do instruct? And the big thing is, I'm sure you're getting some of the credit, but there's got to be a lot of the credit going to him about how's his 13, 14-year-old brother just finishing a bunch of grown men with footlocks. Why not do social media videos? Why not just emphasize that more? Instructional videos.
I mean, he always laughs about it because I think some of Nicky's videos have like more views than all of his combined because you know, he's so young, doing so well. Nicky's been winning, you know, professional events. You know, small professional events, but professional events nonetheless. You know, $500 cash prize here, $1,000 cash prize there. Occasionally, he'll close out a division with his brother, and you know, he's heel-hooking, you know, guys that are black belts or brown belts or whatever the case may be. You know, in no-gi submission grappling and doing very, very well there. So, leg locking a lot of guys. It's kind of his main move, but he's got pretty good jiu-jitsu all around.
But it's just so funny to me that this 14-year-old, he's just beating a grown adults with the leg lock game, and someone who's blue belt level like I am, I'm still, you know, I train foot locks and leg locks with Sean and Dane, but I'm still not totally comfortable. But then you have this 13-year-old kid. It's like, wait, a 13-year-old kid could do it. What are you guys teaching them? Why not just show like do a series of tutorial videos? And that could probably help elevate both those guys.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing with videos right now is that we feel as though, you know, myself, Gordon, Eddie, and John, we feel as though we have something that other people don't have, you know, in that John has this leg lock system that he's come up with, over years and years of studying and training that not a lot of other people have, and it's going to give us an edge in competition for years to come. And I think the biggest problem with making a bunch of videos and things like that, we do seminars and stuff, and I certainly teach some of the stuff that we do. But the biggest problem with just making, repeated instructional videos is you want to keep that little bit of that competitive edge for a little while. But I think eventually we're going to come out with some instructional stuff. You'll see it somewhere along the lines, But yeah, I think that would be the biggest reason. I do a couple instructionals here and there, but I think like doing a bunch of big ones on leg locks and things like that. I think we're waiting a little bit longer for some of our competition game to develop before we start making some of those permanent instructionals where that content's out there and everybody has everything that we have.
All right. No, but you definitely do have a valid point, though, about the sponsorships. As far as Gordon Ryan and having a very bright future, already being pretty dominant, winning IBJJF, No-Gi Worlds, winning the Waza Challenge, second ADCC. And he's definitely on a similar trajectory as to where you were at the same age, maybe a little bit ahead.
It's kind of funny. He lost ADCC trials to a tough guy, and the same thing happened to me at the same age. I lost to JT Torres in a 0-0 decision, and that happened to be my first match. Gordon won his other matches in ADCC trials by submission, but I happened to get the winner of the division that year, my first match, and it was rough, but I was a purple belt, and I kept working hard and, got myself back to doing trials again, and eventually won. And I see him doing the same thing. I think it's a good thing for him ultimately. It could have been cool to see him competing in ADCC with me and Eddie, but at the same time, I think it just jump-started him even more to take it even more seriously than he already does and work on everything to make sure that, next time there's no question,
Cool. Well, we're just about to wrap up. Want to get you in on your 45 minutes. You're already out here on the West Coast. Then you're going to fly back to New Jersey. Then what are you going to do next weekend?
Oh, I am going to have there's going to be a seminar in Vancouver. I forget the name of the gym, but it's going to be in Vancouver, BC, I think. And that's in Canada. And, I'm excited to do that seminar. I've never been to Vancouver before. I've been popping around to a bunch of different places in Canada. It's a really cool place, and everywhere in Canada is a little different. It's a little bit of a different vibe, just like if you go to different areas in the United States. So it's pretty cool, man. I'm excited doing more and more travel with seminars and things. It's unfortunate I can't do more of it because I always have to anchor myself at my school, so I can't travel as much as maybe I'd like to sometimes. But at the same time, it gives me a little spur to travel there, a little spur to travel here. So. And it'll be a few days, and then I'll get to come back and spend some time with my family for the holidays. So
nice. Well, thank you very much, Gary. Definitely going to be there Sunday. Really appreciate the time. And just so you guys know, took a 6 a.m. flight out here. Yeah. And right now it's probably 1 a.m., 2 a.m. his time, and I really do appreciate him hopping on here. So really, and
thanks, Joe.
2016 is going to be another big year for you guys.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool, man.
Thank you, man.
All right.